Welcome, viewers, to another episode of Novel Ideas. My name is James Floyd Kelly. I'm here with two good friends of mine, Eric Wex and Matt Forbeck. We have guest, a guest with us today. Eric,
Say hi, Matt.
How you doing, guys?
we are good. What's the, Atlanta? I will tell you right now. I'm in Atlanta. We had snow today. How about you guys?
No fresh snow, but we still got a few inches on the ground out here. It was negative 25-degree wind chills over the weekend. So.
Yeah, it will very clearly on the West Coast go down as probably the warmest and driest winter in 1,000 years. That's what they're saying at this point. So, yeah, it's very different out here.
I take it back. It's snowing right now.
Oh, wow. My boys were very disappointed because they had to go to school. It wasn't enough to cancel school, which in the South, a half an inch is all it takes for the higher-ups to go, whoa, we can't do this.
Pacific Northwest as well. We don't get that much snow because the ocean, right? We have this big kind of hot water bottle right next to us, so we don't get that much snow. So a half an inch, we're out.
Now, we usually don't close school because of snow. I mean, we can get up to 6 inches without closing school, right? But because we have a great way to remove all this stuff. But this year we started closing down schools. Actually, last year we started it when we hit negative 30-degree wind chills sustained through the mornings, right? Because you can't put a kid outside to walk to school in that kind of weather. They just frostbite before they get home.
I've never experienced negatives ever. I'm from Florida and Georgia, and a little spent of time in Texas. But I've never felt anything lower than I think 8 degrees. Eight, I was dying.
No,
I did -2 when I lived in Chicago for a little bit.
My wife's from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. We went up there for Christmas one year. They had negative 100-degree wind chills on Christmas Eve, right?
Hey, viewers, let me go ahead and tell you, Eric and I and Matt all write for GeekDad, so that's kind of how we know one another. If it's not apparent, I'm wearing my Space Invaders shirt. I think, Matt, you've got, what, a Captain America shirt?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm wearing a plain sweater, so.
You're Green Arrow today.
I'm going the conservative nerd today.
You're in disguise, we know.
Well, hey, Eric, we got a lot of questions for Matt, and we're going to go a little longer today. So, viewers, normally we go to about 15 minutes. We're going to just keep going a little longer. We're not going to put a time on it. So, Eric, you and I kind of were like fighting over who was going to get to talk to Matt's questions first. So I'm gonna give it to you. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. So, Matt, what I wanted to start with is basically how and when did you get started into writing and creating written products, and kind of tell us a little bit of your history, and then a little bit about where you're at right now.
Yeah, I started out when I was in college, essentially. Actually, go back further. When I was like 13 years old, I grew up in southern Wisconsin, so I was able to go to different gaming conventions, like Gen Con, right, which is a big gaming convention, largest in the world these days for tabletop games. And that meant that my mom and dad could drive me up to a convention, drop me off for a day with my friends, pick me up in the evening. So I've been going, God, I think it's going to be like 34 years in a row coming up right now, right? Which I started when I was pretty young, and now I'm pretty old, or getting there. And I fell in with the wrong crowd. I ended up meeting a bunch of guys who were starting a company called Pacesetter, which was like Troy Denning and Steve Sullivan and Mark Akers and Andre Hayday and a whole bunch of other wonderful folks. And I started playtesting for them after soccer practice every Wednesday or whatever. I'd drive up to Delavan, Wisconsin, and I would playtest games with them. So when I went off to college, Troy Denning, who's a buddy of mine, who writes Star Wars novels now, is one of the Pacesetter guys. Introduced me to a guy named Will Niebling, who was the first sales rep for TSR back in the day. And Will ended up was a big Michigan fan, which is where I ended up going to college. And he would buy my season tickets in exchange for me providing him with season tickets to buy, right? So I ended up being great buddies with Will for a long time, and he kind of mentored me into getting into the gaming industry. So I ended up working for Mayfair Games and for Coplow and for Iron Crown and a bunch of other companies as a booth weasel, as they used to call them. You know, we'd wander around doing demos, we'd show people how to play the games, sell them things as well. And as I was doing that, I learned how to talk to the people who were in charge. A lot of the editors would show up as well, and I'd say, hey, you need somebody to help you out with that? I can edit that, I can write that, whatever. So I started out as an editor, essentially, in games, and with a guy named Don Turnbull working for New Infinities, which was Gary Gygax's second company after TSR. And I did that through college. When I got out of college, I ended up going and working for Games Workshop over in Nottingham for 6 months on a student work visa, which is a long, involved story that probably deserves several beers. And then when I came back, oh God, it was 25 years ago this week or last week, to be with my girlfriend, because that was the option. I could either try a long-distance relationship with my girlfriend or try to have a career with Games Workshop. So I came back to be with my girlfriend. She's now my wife of 23 years and the mother of my 5 children.
Sounds like a good decision.
Yeah, I think it worked out well for me. And I love the guys at Games Workshop, but not that much, not that way. So it worked out pretty well. I started out doing freelance game design when I got back, and freelance editing, and I did a lot of stuff for TSR and for Iron Crown. I eventually got into doing writing for these companies as well. And then a guy named Shane Hensley and I started a company called Pinnacle Entertainment Group, which was a role-playing game publisher, still is. We started it back in 1996, and I was with the company until I left just at the end of 1999 because we had a child, Martin, my youngest son, or my eldest son, and we decided we wanted to move back to Wisconsin to be closer to people who would, babysitters who could do it for free that you trust implicitly, which is a very hard thing to purchase anywhere. So we ended up doing that, and after I left Pinnacle, I ended up starting doing more novels as well. So I think my first one came out in 2004, and since then I've had 27 novels published. Most of them have been published with Wizards of the Coast and Games Workshop. I've had a few published with Angry Robot, which is a wonderful science fiction and fantasy publisher. And I've sold a novel to Tor that will hopefully be coming out next summer. I just have to finish writing it. And a bunch of other companies. I've also self-published a number of novels that I did through Kickstarter. And I have a new novel coming out next week, which will be for Halo, actually. It'll be one of the first Halo novels coming from Simon & Schuster. And that's where I am now.
There you go.
That was a lot of blather. I can continue on at any point.
So you said off air that it was 27?
Yeah, that's the last count. Actually, honestly, it sounds silly, but I lose track sometimes, right? So
yeah, well, no, I understand that. So 27 novels. And one of the interesting things that you said before we started is that you do not have an agent.
No, I don't.
That's fascinating. So you've sold 27 novels without an agent.
Yes. It's interesting. I started out as a role-playing game designer for tabletop games, and I wanted to move into writing novels, but none of the people who ran the novel divisions at these companies, like Games Workshop and Wizards of the Coast, were willing to talk to me. They said, well, geez, that's great that you can write millions of words of role-playing games, but you need to finish a novel and turn that over to us and prove that you can actually finish it. That's a legitimate request. But being a working writer who was feeding myself at the time that way, I didn't have the time to just say, I'm going to take 3 months off and write a novel. And honestly, after writing other stuff all day long, I didn't have anything in me to go sit down and write a novel in the evenings.
That I think is, I stop you right there. I think that's just fantastic advice, right? Like if you want to be a creative fiction writer, don't go out and get an ad copy job during the day, right? It's just not going to happen because you're using the same brain areas and you're going to tire them out at your day job and have, I think, a harder time.
Yeah.
So
now, there are some people who can manage it. Cameron Hurley is a great example. She's done a lot of great novels, and she does ad copy during the day. Paul Malmont, who's done a couple of fantastic novels, 3, I guess, so far, again, is an ad copywriter. But Cameron's actually writes fairly quickly. Paul's only come out with a few novels. I think it does suck up that verbal part of your brain.
Yep.
If you're doing something creative all day long, you don't have that itch any longer to do the creative thing at night or in the weekends. You've already scratched it all day long for your day job, right? So it does take some of the urgency out of it for you. And I just knew that I wasn't going to be able to pull it off. But what I got lucky. I had a guy named Ed Pugh over at Reaper Miniature said, Matt, I'll hire you to write a novel. And he said, here, 40,000 words on our CAV game, which is Combat Assault Vehicle, their big battle mech game. And he said, just write up 40,000 words, turn it in to me, and we're good. I sent it out to him, I emailed it to him. He FedExed me a check, overnighted me a check that day without even opening up the file. Ed is just that good of a guy, right? And then when the novel came out later that year, I was able to take them around to Wizards of the Coast and Games Workshop and say, look, I got a book. And they're like, oh, great. And they literally were able to start sending me contracts right away. And I had a lot of other friends who had written novels for TSR and for Wizards of the Coast and for Games Workshop and other companies and other publishers. And I asked them, do I need a novel for this kind of stuff for tie-in, or do I need an agent for tie-ins? And they said, no, not really. And usually your agent will bump it up about the 15% that they managed to take from it. And there aren't any ancillary rights or anything like that. This is a all or nothing kind of a deal because the property actually belongs to somebody else. And I said, okay. So I ended up writing like 18 different novels for tie-in publishers at the time that I didn't have an agent for. And then I sold 3 novels to Angry Robot, sold 2 at first. And again, I looked at it, I said, do I need an agent for this? And I had been doing toy development and game development for video game companies, and I was negotiating much larger contracts than I ever did with novels. I thought, well, I'm pretty comfortable doing this. My dad's a lawyer, so I get free legal help, which is always a great bonus. He's a judge now, but so he can't represent me anymore. It's very sad, but it's okay. And I said, geez, do I want an agent now? I was stubborn enough. I said no. Nowadays, I'm actually thinking about it. Troy Denning, again, who I referred to earlier, was a great mentor of mine, chewed me out at Gen Con saying, you're an idiot. Get yourself an agent. Like, okay, Troy, I know how you feel now. I can understand that. And part of it right now for me is actually sitting down and finding an agent I like and I'm comfortable with. I think part of the problem with finding an agent is often when you're starting out, your agents that you have the choices of are not people you maybe want to work with.
Yeah,
right?
Anyone will do, right?
Right.
Anyone who's hung their shingle and said, hey, I'm an agent, which is the qualifications for being an agent.
There's no licensing for agents, right?
Right. Yeah.
Hey, man, I got a question for you. You kind of, I think you may have answered this, but maybe not. You said that you were having trouble writing your fiction novel because you had this full-time job of editing and stuff like that. So, what was it? Were you writing in the evenings, and then that first novel allowed you to sort of say start making the jump away from doing the game development and editing, or when did you make that jump?
I don't think I've ever really made the jump cleanly, right? I still do role-playing game stuff. I still do toy design stuff. I still do comic books and Marvel Encyclopedia and lots of other different types of projects. But for me, I didn't think I was going to be able to string together enough days in a row. Because when I work on a project, I like to just work on that project right there, right? And I don't like to say do 2 days here, a day here, 3 days here, whatever, and jump back and forth. Because it takes me like a day or two in between to actually make the jump mentally, I think, from one novel to the next or one project to the next. Sometimes even longer. I just need to, clear my brain out and work on something else. So for me, I just didn't think I could do it in the evenings. I was working full-time writing as it was. So just saying, I'm going to take 3 months off, or however long it was going to take me to write the book, which I didn't know at the time, just struck me as a really crazy way to spend a quarter of my income that year. Right. On a flying mark that it might work.
I got a follow-up question.
Sure.
Mr. Forbeck, I know for a fact that you have a reputation. You have a reputation as being just a speedy writer. I mean, you crank out. Give me a number, but I've heard 8,000, 10,000 words or more a day. Is that correct?
When I'm writing on deadline and I'm cruising, my goal for the day is 5,000 words a day.
5,000 words.
And I have hit upwards of that. Often we'll hit upwards of that. My record, I think, was 11,000 words in one day.
That may have been where I heard. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's possible. I'm not there. My goal, my daily goal is 2,000. Right.
That's a good goal, honestly. If you write 2,000 words a day, you get a lot of writing done. The trick for me is there are lots of days where I just don't write. I know the adage is that you should be writing every day, but like I've been wrestling with my website for the last couple of days. I do promotion for other things. I do translations for video games. It was one of the things I did this year. I'm working with a public museum on helping them out with some story ideas for some apps they're developing, all sorts of different things. And those don't all fall under the heading of writing. If I don't write for a week or a month or whatever, that's okay to me. I don't feel like I need to be doing it every day. It's not something that breaks down and leaves me if I don't do it.
How many hours?
You've got 5 kids.
I do have 5 kids, yes, including a set of quadruplets who are now 12 years old.
Wow.
Which, they're a little bit easier now that they're 12 years old. It helps out quite a lot. Those first couple of years are kind of crazy. Ironically, those were the years when I was starting to write novels, actually. It was back when they were babies.
Wow. Quads and novels. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So I have 2 questions to kind of follow up for this. First of all, when you talk 5,000 words a day, how many hours does it take you to crank out those 5,000 words?
It depends. I mean, some days it's very easy. My general rate when I'm cruising is about 1,000 words an hour, right?
Right.
But I will fuck around on Twitter. Excuse my language. It's a family show. I'll screw around on Twitter. I will I'll do blog posts. I'll pick up my kids from school. I'll have a sick kid home like I do today. Things like that will just interrupt you. So often what I'll end up doing is trying to work between 8:30 and 2:30, which are when my kids are at school, right? I drop them off, grab some lunch, get some work, or grab some breakfast, get some work done. Work till about 2:30 when I have to start wrapping stuff up and start going to pick kids up. And then I'll start working again, say after 6 or 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening. And then not sleep a whole lot, just really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And again, the quads trained me out of sleeping. So for many years, I was lucky if I slept 5 hours a night, I was thrilled, right?
Yeah.
I'm working my way slowly up from there. So.
Hey, Matt, I'm curious to know what you're currently working on now. You had mentioned to Eric and I earlier, before the video cast started, you have a Halo, which is coming out next week on March 2nd, and that's an ebook novel.
It is.
But
theoretically, we're collecting and printed at some point, but right now it's ebook and audiobook. So.
Okay, and you also mentioned that you're doing something for DK Publishing called a Marvel Avengers, right? It's an Ultron style book, or
yeah. This is a young readers book for their DK Reads line. They did a whole series of these for Star Wars and other things.
Yes.
And it comes in hardcover and softcover. That'll be out next week too, either Monday or Tuesday, I believe. And I haven't even got my first copy yet. I just got a note from my editor saying, "Hey, what's your phone number? I need that for the Federal Express stuff or the overnight stuff, DHL or whatever they use." But that's a book about the Avengers for kids who are fans of the films, essentially, right? So that's been your first exposure to it through their films or video games, which it really is for most people these days. This gives you an inroad to get a little bit deeper into the comic books and the story behind that, and then hopefully you'll go off and read some of the comic books as well, which I'm a huge fan of.
Did you pitch your? You had mentioned that you're also writing a fiction book for Tor that'll come out next year. Have you written that? You said you haven't written it, but did you pitch the idea and they said we want it?
I have never sold a novel on spec. Every book I've sold has been on a pitch.
On a pitch, wow.
Which is, again, really unusual, right? Most times when you're doing books, you have to have a full novel, at least for your first one or two, that you've written up and you take and you say, look, this is a finished book. This is how well I can do this. Go and sell this, Mr. Agent or Mrs. Agent or Miss Agent. Or go publish this, my friend the publisher. But for me, I've been very fortunate. I've been able to sell most of these on pitches, every one of them actually. Even the book I sold to Reaper, I basically said, I want to write a novel, and Ed Pugh said, sure, go write a novel. And that was the extent of it. We shook hands and we were off to go. And Ed's a great guy, really did give me my start that way. But for Tor, for instance, I'd actually had that on an editor's desk for I think 2 years. I pitched it to this guy. And then I was doing this crazy Kickstarter thing where I tried to write a dozen novels in a year called 12 for 12. And that was going to be my third trilogy I was going to write based on this novel called Loot Drop. And I called up the editor. I said, look, you need to make a decision on this. I realize that we're all friends here. We often will let these things go for a year or two without thinking about it because we're all working on lots of other different projects. But you need to give me a decision on this so I can put it up here because I want to make sure it's free and clear. I don't want to surprise you and have you come back 6 months from now and say, Matt, I just love this idea. Write it. I'm going to have to say, I already did, and it's over here. So he said, yeah, actually, if you write me up a couple sample chapters, I really want to take a look at it. So I took a couple days to do that, and he looked at it. He said, yes, I'm going to buy it. So I ended up having to come up with another series to do for that trilogy. But that ended up being the Dangerous Games trilogy I did, which is a series of thrillers set at Gen Con, which is the largest tabletop gaming convention in the world and my favorite time of year.
So one of the interesting things about the way that your path worked is that when you started out, the world building was done for you, right? Because a huge number of novels, right, that you're writing already have their worlds built because you're writing in somebody else's intellectual property. Yep. So that it's kind of, it's the equivalent of writing fan fiction. Well,
it's licensed fan fiction with authorized people giving guidance along the way.
Right.
That's the big difference, I think, is you're being commissioned to write these things as opposed to just writing them and turning them into somebody.
But from the writing point of view, that's so great because you're taking this whole big chunk of brain power and just saying it's already done, right? Like you don't have to try to create a universe. You don't have to try to create magic rules if you're writing a fantasy book or science fiction rules if you're writing science fiction. Like all that stuff's taken care. And you get to just walk in with characters and do stuff. It has
pluses and minuses to it. There are very much pros and cons, right? It is wonderful in the sense that when I was starting out doing this, I said this is like being paid to learn how to write novels, right?
Yeah.
Because all I have to worry about is the characters and the plots and the storyline and how everything else fits together and the way that I tell it to people, right? The actual storytelling itself. But on the other hand, you're also you have a lot of restrictions on you, right? You can't be as free with the world and with what's going on as you want to be. You have to basically stay within the confines that they've already defined for you, right? The one big rule with writing any kind of tie-in fiction, generally speaking, unless somebody's just told you to go whole hog, is that you have to treat them like they're somebody else's toys, right? You get to take them off the shelf, play with them, and do whatever the heck you want. But when you're done, you have to put them back in roughly the same condition in which you found them, right? And that does restrict you in what you're permitted to do with these things. You're not allowed to make world-shaking changes. You're not allowed to destroy the big bad. You're not allowed to maim the main characters or kill them off, right? Unless you're specifically told you're allowed to do so.
Unless you're Joss Whedon.
Well, even then, unless he's got control, he has to ask permission, right? He can't go to Marvel and say, "Well, I'm going to kill off Captain America in this one." So they say, "Well, they'll say, Joss, tell us how and why you're going to do this, and then how we're going to bring him back," right? Because it's not like they don't kill off characters all the time. But yeah, it's kind of neat that somebody else had done a lot of the groundwork. They had laid the groundwork for you, and you're working in often a world that you're a fan of, right? I mean, the Halo book I just wrote, I love Halo. I actually played the hell out of Halo, and I've played all the different games several times through with my kids. Both before my kids were old enough, and then when they got old enough, I started playing with them as well. And it's neat to be able to play in that kind of a universe where you really enjoy it, you know it pretty well, and to have people let you peer behind the curtain and say, "Oh, that's why that happened." I can see if I can work that into the story a little bit better for how it goes. But on the other hand, it's not your thing, right? The other downside of doing tie-in fiction is it's not your thing. At the end of the day, if you have a disagreement with the people who own the property, they win every time, right? And that's okay. You know that going into it, but it does change things a bit. It also means that if it does really, really well, you don't see anything else off that. It belongs to them, not for you, right? You might see a royalty off it, but if they decide to make a movie based on your story that you wrote for this thing, probably you're not going to see a whole lot out of that. Whereas for my original novels, I can sell translation rights and film options and video games and role-playing games, whatever, and take profit all that because I've done all the work and it belongs to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what a great way to start out. Right?
Oh, it works. I have no complaints. Right?
That's kind of where I'm resting for our viewers is like if you have a property that you love, put it in a shoebox and never let it see the light of day until you're ready to, right? But feel free to write the tie-in novel, right? Do it.
I'm not against people writing fan fiction. However, if you're going to do this, I want to caution people because some people think, I will write this Star Wars novel or whatever it is and then send it off to the Star Wars publishers, right? The Star Wars publishers won't look at it, and chances are very good that it will never see the light of day. It could not be published, even if they were willing to look at it, because there are so many things that you don't know about what's going on behind the scenes for the publishing program that you're going to trip over. Even the first few sentences of your book will be wrong, right? Yeah. And because of that, it's very likely not going to be published. If you're going to do that for fun or for training, that's fantastic. I encourage that, right? But if you're trying to do it to get published, it's the wrong way to go about it. The publisher will want to send you a contract, get a pitch from you, they'll send you a contract, and based upon the pitch, will then say, this is a great pitch, except you need to do this, 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 and this, and over here this is wrong, but if you could put this in here, it'll make it much better. So don't expect to actually get published that way.
Yeah. So this is kind of to get into that creator writer stuff. This is an apocryphal story that my daughter told me a couple of days ago about Harry Potter, and it's at the beginning of the 6th film, right, where Dumbledore interrupts Harry's potential date and kind of yanks him out of the subway station and takes him off, and apparently Dumbledore made a comment about his past with women and all this stuff. And J.K. Rowling just kind of scooted a note across the table to the scriptwriter and said, he's gay. And the scriptwriter kind of went, oh, well, that makes sense. Oh. It all comes into focus now. I don't know if that's true, but it's just a fantastic story.
Well, she did come out later and say that he was gay. That may have been the one way that it was shared amongst other people. I mean, screenwriters who are adapting stuff are essentially doing the same kind of things as I'm doing as a novelist adapting stuff too, right? All sorts of adaptations. They belong to you. They belong to somebody else. and you don't know everything that's inside the creator's head. You have to ask a lot of the time, and hopefully they're around to answer the questions for you and willing to work with you.
Yeah.
Hey, Eric, we're out of time.
Uh-oh.
But it always happens.
It always happens, but I tell you what, Matt, I can guarantee you that we're going to have some viewers who are going to want to have you back.
Yes.
I know I want to have you back, so we'll give you a good break. We won't have you back in a week or two, maybe a month, or maybe 2 months. But we would like to have you back because I like listening to your history. But I also think, and we didn't have time for this, I do think you probably have some more advice for indie writers or people who are just getting started. We need to pick your brain next time. Now that we know who you are and how you got where you are, what we'll do is on the next time we have you come over, we'll actually get into the nuts and bolts, and maybe you can offer up some advice.
That sounds cool.
Budding
I'd
fiction.
definitely be up for that anytime, guys.
But I personally want to, I've known you for virtually over the phone or via Hangout for at least 4 years. I think I've been with GeekDad now for 4 years, and but it's just always a pleasure to talk to you, and I appreciate you coming and talking with Eric and I today.
Well, thank you guys both for having me on. It's been a real pleasure, honestly.
Yeah.
Eric, we'll talk about next week. Viewers, if you have any questions, for Matt, please send them to Eric on Eric. I almost said mattforbeck.com, ericwex.com, and let us know if you have any questions that we could pass on to Matt. If you have some ideas for other topics for future episodes, we want to hear them.
You can also post them over at GeekDad too. Put them in the post, and Matt is able to get in there and answer them directly there. So that's probably a good spot.
Well, Eric, we'll do this again next week, okay?
That sounds good. Thank you,
All right.
Matt.
Thanks a lot, guys.